Yeah, I mean, I tend to, I write water into a lot of things that I do, and for a number of reasons, and there's more, and again, for me, it's a transportive sort of physical element. I feel like when an audience sees water and they hear water, you sort of connect with, or a character is within the water. I think that it's very easy for a viewer to imagine themselves within water, to have sort of memories of being, of touching water, being connected to it. It's a very emotional thing, and I think it's physically transportive. I think I'm sort of obsessed with the idea of doing things that help the audience connect with the physical location, with sort of being within the film world, and that goes to something that a lot of things that we did visually with the film as well. There's a lot of sort of wider shots with deeper focus, and that where we are not cutting so quickly, where the shots linger long enough that you can actually sort of get a sense of the geography of the space, so that you feel like you're within that world. And water is another thing that, to me, does that. And there's other sort of thematic reasons that I'm interested in it, but that's one of the big ones.
Talk about how you have to go from location to location. As a producer, what's it like making sure all those locations are set, ready to go? And what's it like working with David in terms of making sure, were there any days where you were just like, we got to get moving? What was your role like?
I mean, it was rough. We had a lot of locations and a lot to accomplish, and that's always the hardest thing when you're doing a low-budget film, is just not having enough time. And there were so many moves and things. And then there were also a lot of challenges. Just we were losing locations, honestly, because there were murders, but we were in Detroit, so it was just a lot of physical safety issues. So things were falling through, and it was hard to get certain places permitted by the city and all that, because they really are dangerous. Some kind of condemned buildings and the factory you see and stuff are really.
The Packer plant is a dangerous place to be, honestly. Yeah, we have a lot of security, and it's also just a physically, difficult building to work in.
Yeah.
Really, really difficult. It was actually very cold. I mean, it was grueling, I think, for the actors, particularly Micah. Yeah, it was really tough.
Are you guys
the first time I watched it, I was like, Micah, I can't believe you don't see.
Sorry.
Oh, no, just good. To her credit, it was freezing some of those nights, too. And her performance, just that you don't pick up on that, I think, as an audience, is really amazing, because she was. And with Love Night, she was fun.
You were asking? I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit. That's where my family live. I went to Wayne State in Detroit. That's home for me.
Did you have any specific locations in mind? Did they come from your nightmares, or were they just things that you were like?
No, there's nothing specifically in this film that is like a directly lifted from the nightmare. The nightmare sort of inspired it. It's more about the feeling of dread and anxiety that came from the nightmare that led to the film. But I mean, there are certain places that are definitely I wrote or in mind. It's more about the feeling of the area. I mean, the park that she runs to after sort of she gets chased through her room and she runs outside. That park is like a park that a couple blocks from where I grew up, that I would go to when I was a kid. So I wrote that specifically to take place there. There's a bunch of little things. And then for me, the film takes place, somewhat outside of time. It is not a specific moment. It feels maybe like the 70s and 80s, but there's also something modern about it, something even older. At least that's sort of the intention. As for taking place there, it was important for me to sort of highlight on some level and show that sort of that separation that exists between the suburb and the city.
There's a really cool camera shot that you did in the pool when she first dunks underneath. Was the camera in a box? How did you shoot that? Because I didn't see the water come up at all and create a split level. What did you do for that? In the big pool when she's going underneath.
And then we go underneath with her?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we had okay.
You shot underwater shots too.
It's just an underwater housing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just an underwater housing, and we have basically.
You can see you can see both.
I actually didn't, because when it went down, it was so quick, and I didn't actually get the levels, because normally you get those two levels. You had it literally right on top of the water, and then down, and I just thought maybe there was some camera.
Oh, there may have been a cut in there too. Depending on the shot, they may have taken some pieces and put them together.
Gotcha. Okay, so you finished the film. It's done now, and you're ready to send it out. It went to Cannes. Where else did you send it? What other festivals?
It's, you know what, this movie has played like so many film. It's played a ton of film festivals. We played Critics Week in Cannes. We played Deauville, Karlovy Vary, Toronto. Fantastic Fest in Austin was super cool. I mean, I'm gonna forget a ton. I mean, no, yeah, Sundance, BFI. I don't know, a lot. Yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
And then it gets picked up.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was it?
Radius bought it like basically right out of Cannes. Yeah.
What was that like?
Cool. Yeah. I mean, you make a movie, you want to sell it. You want to make sure that people will see it. Yeah, it was really good.
Were there other people who were coming on board for it? Was Radius the first company to come in?
No, there were other companies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good film, that's why. What questions do you guys have for these wonderful people?
I have two. First one is on the movie theater at the beginning. Is that a real place? A Japanese-themed movie theater? It was kind of strange. I don't know. And
The theater that you mean they go on the date?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the Redford Theater. Yeah, that's a real. That's a.
Okay, because it has a strange theme. I thought.
Yeah, it's super cool. Yeah.
I was just wondering. And then secondly, I've seen a lot of posters for the film. Did you guys commission those, or is that fan art?
Yeah, there's a bunch have been made. It depends on which ones you're talking about, but there's there's the one that they've been using here in the U.S., which is the sort of car one, and then they just had one done by I'm going to mess up her last name, but artist named Akiko did a really great painting that they just put out, but I haven't seen it physically yet. I'm excited to get one of those. Actually, they're really cool. But then the UK, the film has already came out in the UK, so they have several posters, and they commissioned a couple artists to do some there as well. So there's a bunch of different posters, and there's a bunch of really cool ones.
This is for the editor. Julio, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Were there any particular challenges in cutting the film, in like particular scenes or aspects of the editing?
Yeah, there were of course, different kinds of challenges for every film. This one, I would say, the pool scene, we really dug deep and spent a lot of time on the pool scene to make that feel right. Just from an action editing sort of perspective. But on the flip side, I think in general, the specificity of what we wanted editorially. We wanted edits to be meaningful. I think you find in a lot of situations, there'll be like a random cutaway, just as like somebody nodding, or some reaction shot that you just cut away from in order to just like, oof, we can keep going with the scene and get done. And this one, Mitchell, and I was on board completely, he really wanted decisions made, like this is where the edit should happen. And of course you adjust to what you need as far as the way the film is developing. But I think it's amazing with his set of aesthetics, and I bring my own ideas, but we have, of course, a lot of shared ideas. But you're still figuring out like what is that best edit point, and you don't always agree, but you do often. But just it's amazing when you decide like we want edits to be meaningful and to also be more or less invisible. It's really hard work. So that I'd say that was a major challenge.
We tried to not. There's sort of a goal of not having too many edits in this film, and having them be for a reason. That it wasn't just about sort of covering our ass or fixing a mistake, but something as a choice. And so yeah, that makes it harder. And in a way, it's one of those things that maybe you don't feel because there's a slower pace to those cuts. But yeah, a lot of energy went into that.
There.
Approximately, what was the budget? And second, what's one of your favorite or other movies?
Oh yeah. You know what? They don't usually like me to say what the budget is. I mean, I don't have a problem with it, but others frown on it, so I can't say. But it's we had some money, not enough, but
US.
but as for my favorite word, I'm a huge horror fan. I mean, a ton. Creature from the Black Lagoon is probably my favorite horror movie. I love Romero's Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead is probably my favorite of his. I love all kinds of Carpenter and Cronenberg. I love The Shining. there's a ton of stuff. Yeah. Invasion of the Body Snatchers from the 50s. I love the Kaufman version. I love horror movies.
What visuals from this is a good loud one. What visuals actually inspired you when you were writing this from these other movies that you were talking about? Did anything was anything a part of your thought process there?
I tend to not. There are very few sort of for me. I've had a lot of people ask me to sort of think that I'm directly taking from a certain thing. It's more about if I've watched enough of these films, and I have. It's really about sort of me reinterpreting some of those ideas. The truth is, I'm not really looking at a movie and going, I'm going to do that. It's more about, I've watched this stuff enough that some of that's going to come out in the writing and sort of inspired by it, but it's not so much a direct sort of one-to-one type of inspiration, I guess. It's a little bit more general than that. There's some things in the movie, like, the pool thing is very much homage to cat people, but most of the time it's really just it's a more sort of general inspiration. But in terms of what inspired me for the visuals, that's a tricky one. I tend to, when I'm writing, I'm thinking about the sort of the visual construction of the film, and that just comes from having working and making and filming things and making movies and a lot of years of studying this. So there are some Mike, we definitely, I think a lot of people have noticed this. We definitely looked to a Crutzen. There's Hito. I'm mispronouncing the name, but there's some photographers that we were definitely referencing. But I also just went through tons of my favorite horror films before we made the movie and watched them. So it's more like just letting that stuff wash over you.
When you were writing the script, did you call Mike and say, I have this idea, what are your thoughts on it, or was that a secondary, that was after the script?
Yeah, Mike came on once the script was written.
Other question? Right there.
What was behind the literary choices for Dostoevsky, and then was it Khrushchev?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to explain, but I like the idea of the Yar character sort of being within this world, but being a little bit distant from it too. Sort of, there's this light humor to her, being something of an outside narrator to some degree. And I like some of the thematic links between those things without sort of over explaining. But yeah, those are a few of the reasons.
Go ahead.
What's it like raising money for this type of movie, and how do you pitch financiers on the project?
I don't know.
So much of it is just getting, genre helps always to get them interested, but then so much of it is just David's vision and like you had asked, having a previous film for them to reference and just see what he can execute and what he can do with these characters. Because on the page, so much of this is execution based. So many films are execution based. They can be amazing on the page and terrible and vice versa. So it was really about, I think, getting them to read it, and then people would respond, and then David, just giving his pitch and really.
Yeah, this wasn't so much one that you pitch because it's kind of ridiculous if you just say it. It's pretty silly. I personally, I avoided telling people what this movie was for a while. I would say, oh, just read the script, or just wait till I make the movie. Because that made it challenging, I think, just putting that together. But I did several very elaborate sort of lookbooks, and that was part of what I think we used to sell it. I think those were pretty put a lot of work into those. They're pretty nice, and that and the script, and then my first film was critically well received. Not that many people have seen it, but it also played some really nice film festivals, and it got out there in a relative to what that film was. Which was like a $30,000 movie.